the who, the why and the how. And Dr. Rodmell is going to be taking questions with me at the end. And I'd just like to thank Dr. Rodmell for her supervision of this study. I really couldn't have done this without her expertise. So thank you very much. Okay, so first I would like to thank the home education community for their support and participation. And I would like to give a special thanks to Kerry Logan. She was a long-standing member of the home education community who recently passed away. One of her final acts in supporting her community was taking part in this research, and that is why today's presentation is dedicated to her. So, a brief history of home education law in Ireland. Article 42 of the Constitution grants parents educational freedom. Home education was unregulated until 2000, when the Education Welfare Act brought in a system of application, assessment and registration. The Child and Family Agency Act of 2013 transferred oversight of home education from the Department of Education to TUSLA, which is the National Child Protection Organisation of Ireland. Then came the case of Sunshine v TUSLA, which had implications for home educators nationally, requiring TUSLA to amend its policies. And lastly, in 2020, SI 330, as it's commonly known, brought in further regulations for home education. So, gap in the research. Home education is the fastest growing educational choice in Ireland, with applications to home educate rising by 274%. This increase occurs amid significant policy changes, with scholars arguing for a project to be conducted before governments place any limitations on home education. Yet Ireland lacks empirical research compared to other European countries. This study set out to provide a snapshot into the lives of home educators. To achieve this, the following research questions were developed. The who. Is there a typical home educator, and if so, what does that look like? The why. What factors influenced families to home educate? And lastly, the how. What methods do families employ in their delivery of home education? So this was a feasibility study where parents were asked to complete a questionnaire and provide feedback. The questionnaire consisted of 85 questions. I know it's a sin, isn't it? Comprising of a mixture of question types. With those requiring most participant engagement placed at the start to mitigate participant fatigue. It did work a little bit. We'll get there. You're tired hearing me say that. Sample criteria. So, whilst there is no objective definition of an educator, drawing on explanations offered by other academics and expanding the inclusive criteria, individuals were invited to take part if they considered themselves to be a parent, guardian or primary caregiver to a child aged between 2 and 18 who oversaw the deliverance of education that was provided primarily within the home setting, independent of the formal school context. So it was noted that the nature of the group being studied limited sampling methods to non-probability based, and mixed method sampling was preferable. Flexibility in the recruitment process was adopted, initially using snowballing, but then moving towards a hybrid of snowballing and convenience sampling methods. This study consisted of 13 participants, 9 sourced from snowballing, 4 from a combination of snowballing, and we are on the wrong slide, but we're getting there. There we go. So yes, 13 was considered a sufficient number for a pilot study. Barriers to participation. Okay, we're doing fine. The main barrier to participation was the perceived risk of harm, and that stemmed from previous researchers' unsuccessful attempts, which left some home educators feeling profoundly distrustful and misrepresented. Because home educators had this distrust of researchers from outside the community, the most effective way of overcoming barriers to participation was to be perceived by the community as one of them. This ethnographic element of the project was critical in gaining the community's trust. Taking time to address individual queries directly brought clarity and reassurance to potential participants, and using sensitive language made the community feel respected and understood. For example, using the term home education instead of homeschooling. Recruitment strategy. Are we on right? Yes, we're doing right. Participants were recruited directly with assistance of gatekeepers and through advertisement in home education spaces on social media. My favourite bit. Oh no, nearly. Questionnaire feedback. Most participants left feedback, with all responding positively to the participant incentive, and 79% left their contact details so they could be contacted for future research opportunities. A third or so gave feedback about the survey length, giving mixed reviews. In responding to questionnaire feedback, a participant incentive would not be used in a larger scale study due to the reduced likelihood of research ethics committee approval in Ireland, the risks of fraudulent responses for financial gain, and the counterproductive nature that financial rewards can present. And lastly, a shorter questionnaire would be developed. Now, the best bit, the results. The WHO. So, the US Department of Education in 2021 found most home-educated children came from a two-parent household. In this study, all participants were mothers and 76% had a male spouse. Ray found in 2010 that 81% of home-educating mothers were not in paid employment, and similarly, in this study, 80% of mothers considered themselves to work within the home, using terms like full-time homemaker. Nearly all male partners were engaged in paid work. Home-educated families tended to be larger, as noted by Ray. It's going to be a lot of Ray. With 61.54% of participants in this study having 3 or more children, and an average of 2.538 children per woman, which is almost double the national average as recorded by the Central Statistics Office in 2022. And the actual figure is likely to be even higher, as this study only accounted for children who lived at home and were aged between 2 and 18, so we like to have babies. Almost 1 in 3 children had special educational needs or a disability, and 40% of those who did were on the autism spectrum. Eisenberg in 2007 suggested that home education prevalence decreases as children get older, with many returning to formal schooling. This study found a similar pattern, with 46.16% attending school at some point, and median age of home educated children was 10 years old. Home ownership was 12.15% below that recorded of the general population in 2022, and nearly half were in receipt of means-tested social welfare payments. And 2/3 of home educators' net household income fell below the median household income for the general population in 2023. No one in this study had an income over €80,000, yet 1 in 3 US home educators has an income of over $100,000, as reported by the US Department of Education in 2021. Ray in 2010 found almost all home educators were Christians, but in this study, 54% of participants and their partners did not identify as Catholic or Christian. An equal proportion of participants, 31%, followed Catholicism, as did a non-specified spiritual belief system. Ireland's unique and complex religious history has contributed to this diversity, with only 7.7% identifying as atheists. What can be said is that nearly all of Ireland's and America's home educators do believe in something. Gavaza et al. Found lower vaccination rates amongst home educators. Did she go there? Yes, she went there. And in this study, only 15% of children were fully vaccinated. Shock horror. With parents citing beliefs in natural immunity, delayed vaccine schedules, and concerns about experimental vaccines. Home educators not only expressed an active interest in their child's physical health, but also their psychological well-being, with 76.92% of parents following attachment-style parenting. A focus on positive connection within the home extended to family pets, with 84.62% of families owning an animal. I'm guilty of that one as well. Weiss in 2023 noted that European research suggests securely attached children are likely to adopt the political ideology of their parents. With attachment-style parenting being popular amongst home educators in Ireland and a growing alignment with left-wing ideology, politicians should be mindful of this group's political leaning and the likelihood of a second wave of liberals as home-educated children reach adulthood. Whilst liberal in voting behaviour, home educators' traditional familial structures and spiritual beliefs suggest a new breed of voters who reject and accept in part both left and right-wing ideology. However, overall, home educators appear disinterested in politics, with 84.61% not knowing about changes made to home education regulations in 2020 and having a voting turnout for the same year, general elections, 12.9% lower than the national average. Of those who did vote, votes were predominantly for parties on the left, which Castles and Mayor note to be in contrast to Ireland's voters of the 1980s, where the population predominantly identified as right-wing. In 2021, Muller and Reagan share that the Irish voter has transitioned to adopt a centre-left position, and it can be noted that in the 2020 election, voters' income played a key role in self-identifying as left-wing. Those who had low or middle-range incomes were most likely to self-identify as left, and in terms of voting behaviour, vote for Sinn Féin. The correlation between voting behaviour and income level was also found in this study. Despite over 3/4 of parents having negative experiences themselves with formal education and believing exams to be of limited benefit, all parents were supportive of their children going to university and taking exams. Ray found home educators education than the general population, and this study also found high levels of educational attainment. In fact, Ireland's home educating mothers were more educated than their US counterparts. Yes! We've got to beat you guys at something, haven't we? Stemming from the dissatisfaction with what the school system could offer, as noted by Newman, all participants said they home educated because they believed they could provide a better education than schools. And 53% said they were motivated by the opportunity to provide an individualised education. In the US, Redford et al. Found religion was a motivating factor to home educate for 64% of parents, and Rothermell's 2003 research showed 13% said the same. In this study, religion accounted for only 7% of responses. Of notable interest was the proportion of those who were home educating non-electively and those concerned about the sexual health curriculum being taught in schools. Are we on the right slide? The hand, yes. Perfect. Over half of mothers said they were the primary facilitators of their children's education. The majority of participants did not use a specific methodology, but among those who did, about 2/3 preferred Montessori or Steiner methods. 86.43% did not follow the national curriculum, although nearly half incorporated other curriculums to some extent. A common approach was a mixture of both child and parent-led learning, and over half of parents adopted an unstructured method for home educating, with parents reporting their approach had evolved over time. In most families, formal learning activities like project work or workbook exercises occurred in the mornings, with afternoons dedicated to informal learning through play and child-led activities. Elements not typically found in school-based learning were facilitated by most, and an emphasis was placed on nurturing human connection through physical touch and play. All participants belonged to home education support groups, and a preference for natural socialisation was evident, with most children socialising with peers of all ages. 92.31% of children participated in organised activities outside of home, and nearly all parents reported their children exercise regularly, with many believing their children were far more physically active than their schooled peers. Reading development among home educators varied widely, as found by Patterson. With some children in this study starting to read at age 3 and others becoming fluent at around ages 10 or 11. Technology provided easier access to learning materials and played a significant role in 53.85% of children's education. Across the board, there was a hands-on, interactive approach taken to learning. Nearly half of the children were learning 2 or more languages, and the majority were learning to play a musical instrument. Record keeping and monitoring of children's educational progress was also commonplace. About a quarter of parents disclosed that they were home educating illegally. The actual figure is likely to be even higher. 15% reported having a negative experience with TUSLA, and a further 7% were subject to the commencement of legal proceedings, with one mother being sent to prison for continuing to home educate. To conclude, this study identified a liberal voting preference amongst home educators, along with conservative family structures emphasising traditional gender roles. Irish home educators, typically less wealthy than the general population, exhibit stark income disparities compared to their US counterparts. Common practices included attachment parenting, low vaccine uptake and unschooling, accompanied by high educational attainment amongst mothers. The community values eclectic learning methods, hands-on education, and takes a holistic approach to parenting and education, where the two are not mutually exclusive. The study provided a snapshot into Ireland's home education, but there is still so much more to learn. Larger scale studies, further research, particularly into voting behaviour and bilingualism, are encouraged. Thank you for listening.
Wow, many thanks. So we have 2 minutes for quick questions and answers. Someone need to open the floor.
Well, I'll ask. It might be related. Sorry. No.
My name is Bill Bunn. Can I assume that you are the sunshine in the court case about sunshine? And if so, how does that impact why you're doing this?
How does that, what's that?
Why does that impact why you were doing this study?
I don't think it directly impacted it. I think it was more the fact that I've home educated my children, and there is currently to date no empirical research into home education in Ireland, and it is desperately needed. And whilst we can look to America and the UK, we need our own domestic research, and so I thought I'd jump in the deep end and give it a go. But yes, I do think that in order to safeguard our constitutional right and to advocate for home educators, we need to understand the community, and we need to make that information available to governments and policymakers. So that's why research is essential.
To what degree do you think that your sample was representative? It's not an attack on you. Just what's your gut level feeling of whether it's representative of what's going on in Ireland?
So, as the home educating mum, not the researcher, I would say it's bang on the money, right? Because I think when you home educate, you can get a feel for the community that you're part of and the people that you're around. Putting my academic hat on, there's no way that I can say that a feasibility study like this, can possibly be, generalised to the whole population. That is why we really do need larger scale studies. This was just kind of, dipping our toe in the water, so to speak, and we really need we need funding, we need other academics, we need help. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, we should move on.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So our next presentation will be held by